My name is Noah, and right now, I'm fishing on a levee. The trick to catching fish is to stay calm and keep a low profile. As I watch the line I've cast, my mind drifts back to yesterday's scolding from my boss. I work in sales at a moving company, a job I got into after starting as a part-timer in high school. A few years later, I got transferred and ended up with a terrible boss named Susan. Susan, now in her 40s, has a hysterical scream that's tough to handle. "You're the only one in our department who hasn't met this period's goals. You're dead weight here," she yelled. She always brings up my educational background whenever she can. I didn't go to college. I joined this company straight out of high school. Ironically, Susan went to a vocational school for illustration. She used to be an illustrator, but after failing to realize her dream, she's been in this industry for almost 20 years. At drinking parties, a drunk Susan would loudly lament, "I should have gone to university instead of that vocational school." She's clearly frustrated with her life choices. Susan's complex about her education is serious. She's awkward around college-educated newcomers and tries to demean people like me with only a high school education. Frankly, I've been experiencing daily harassment from Susan. But in this department, her word is law due to her long tenure. No one defends me from her harassment. Instead, they side with Susan, leaving me to face cold stares. It's hard to maintain a calm and clear mind, even when I'm fishing. "Hey Noel, what's up?" Your line is shaking. My fishing buddy George alerts me, snapping me out of my thoughts. "Got something on your mind?" George is an avid fisherman who would even go fishing at sea during long holidays. His skin is tanned, and he always has a pleasant smile. "No, I'm fine." I shake my head and refocus on fishing. I can't let my personal issues disturb George's enjoyable private time. "Oh, now you're focused." George laughs. "It's only when I'm fishing like this that I can forget the unpleasant things." After refocusing, I got a hit on my fishing rod. When I reeled it in, it turned out to be a pretty big catch. My fishing buddies erupted in cheers. "Nice catch. This must be the king of this area. Your family will be thrilled." George rejoices as if it's his own achievement. I feel my face stiffen momentarily, but quickly muster a smile. Even on a day when I catch a big one, I'm still bogged down with worries. I sigh inwardly. I just couldn't bring myself to say it in front of George that my wife was having an affair. I have a wife, Helen, and a daughter, Sarah, who just turned 11. Even when things got tough, I could keep going by thinking of my family. But lately, Helen's behavior has been strange. She's unusually cold towards me, and I feel like she's distancing herself. That's not all. Recently, I saw Helen dressed up, walking with a man I didn't recognize on my way back from work. I watched the scene in disbelief. I couldn't believe Helen would. It just didn't seem possible. I was too afraid to confront her about the truth, so I still haven't asked. I hope it's just my misunderstanding. As pathetic as it sounds, I find myself wanting to ignore it more and more each day. I thought showing her the fish I caught today might improve our relationship, even just a little. So, with that faint hope, I hurried back home, packing the fish in a cooler. But my wishful thinking quickly crumbled. Helen didn't even glance at the fish I brought home and instead handed me a piece of paper that wiped the smile off my face. It said, "Divorce." "No way, are you kidding?" Even as I said that, Helen's cold expression didn't change. "I'm tired of being with a man who's gloomy, boring, and smells like fish. I want to start my life over." I was stunned by Helen's harsh words. "Start over? Are you saying you're going to be with that man?" I finally confronted Helen about seeing her with another man a few weeks ago and accused her of cheating. Helen looked surprised for a moment, saying, "You saw that, huh?" But then she blamed me, saying, "It's all your fault. You've always been so incompetent." Such a selfish reason, but I, not good with words, couldn't come up with a good response. I yelled, The affair was your doing. Yet Helen retorted, "Do you even know how much you earn? With that salary, you expect me to do all the housework and take care of Sarah while working. What are you acting so high and mighty for?" Sure, I had my shortcomings, but I never intended to put everything on Helen. However, it's partly true that she had more burden, and I found myself at a loss for words. I always got out-argued in arguments. In the end, I couldn't stop Helen, and she left the house with our daughter Sarah. All I could do was watch Sarah leave with a sad face. The next weekend, I was standing absent-mindedly on the breakwater where I usually fish. The evening sky turned the sea an orange hue. They say staring at the vast ocean makes your troubles seem small, but just looking at the sea won't bring Helen and Sarah back. My worries only grew day by day. I had no love left for Helen. I couldn't forgive her for driving me to utter despair. I thought, go wherever you want with another man, but the problem was our daughter, Sarah. I want to live with my beloved daughter, but now, in the midst of a custody battle. Knowing that the mother gets custody 90% of the time, the odds seemed grim. Even if the divorce is due to the wife's infidelity, it's bizarre how the custody usually doesn't go to the husband. Will I never be able to live with Sarah again? The more I thought about it, the more depressed I became. And then, at that moment, my fishing buddy George suddenly asked me, "Hey Noel, I thought you had left already. What's with that look? Like you're about to jump into the sea." Hearing this, I almost burst into tears. Normally, I would just smile and say it's nothing. But today, I just couldn't. I poured out all my pent-up emotions to George. I told him about being constantly berated by my boss at work, about my wife cheating on me and filing for divorce, taking our daughter away, and how I felt utterly hopeless. I've been told I'm worthless by both my job and my family. Maybe I should just jump into the sea. I couldn't hold back my tears. They just kept flowing. I was sobbing so much I could barely speak, but George just looked at me straight and listened to everything I had to say. He grabbed my shoulders firmly and said, "Just being alive and able to fish is enough, isn't it?" His compassionate smile finally calmed my heart. "Noah, if you were gone, I'd lose my fishing mentor. That would be a real problem for me. Can you keep living, thinking of it as a favor for me?" Mentor. I hardly ever catch big fish. What are you talking about? I fish more than anyone, and yet the other day I ended up catching a plastic bottle. Seriously, there's too much plastic trash these days. Maybe I should become an environmental activist. George's joke made me laugh. He is a really funny guy. I realized he has this charisma that draws people in, and his kind nature is probably what everyone loves about him. Thanks, George. I'll try a bit harder. Good to hear, Noah. But remember, it's important to muster up the courage to fight sometimes. Fight, Jess, please. Muster up the courage to fight. I'll pick up the pieces for you. Picking up pieces. That sounds like you're expecting me to die. I couldn't help but smile wryly at George's words. But indeed, I had been running from conflict, always just taking whatever was thrown at me. Is this really how it should be? George's words made me question for the first time what it means to fight. The next day, when I went to work, I got yelled at by Susan again. "Your shirt is all wrinkled. Do you even care about your job? If you don't, just leave." It was the same old yelling, just using me as a stress reliever. Yesterday, the day before, and the day before that, I had been constantly bombarded with such yelling every single day. I had enough. Remembering what George said, I finally understood what it meant to fight. I had a part in this too. If I didn't like it, I should speak up, I told myself. Then I glared at Susan and said, "So, it's okay if I leave." Her face changed color as she wasn't expecting me to talk back. "What? Well, it's not a problem." I could see she was clearly shaken. I slammed the resignation letter I had written earlier onto Susan's desk. "Then please submit this to our president." The atmosphere in the office changed instantly. "I can't believe Noah is snapping," someone said in a frightened voice. "Fine, fine. If you insist that much, I'll take your resignation letter to the president's office right away." With a huff, Susan gripped my resignation letter and headed towards the president's office. So, this is the end of this company I have worked for so many years. The thought made me feel a bit sad. I did love my job here. Well, for now, I'll head to my usual fishing spot this coming weekend. I'll make sure George picks up my pieces as he promised. Just as I was thinking about this and started to tidy up my desk, it happened suddenly. The phone on my desk rang. The call was from the president's office. Maybe it's about the resignation letter. Thinking this, I answered the phone and was told, "Please come to the president's office immediately." I left my desk as it was and headed straight there. Entering the president's office, I found Mr. Thompson, the president, and Susan inside. Surprisingly, Susan suddenly apologized to me. "I'm sorry. I went too far. Please reconsider submitting your resignation." I was puzzled about what was happening, but Mr. Thompson explained, "Noah, you were handling our major client, Bridgewater Commercial, but recently Susan took over, right?" "Yes, that's correct. I was in charge of Bridgewater Commercial until last week. I always believed in nurturing relationships with our existing clients just as much as acquiring new ones, so I took care to handle them meticulously. However, due to low sales, Susan finally took over the account. About that, the client has said, 'If it's not Noah, we may reconsider our business with you.'" "What? Mr. Bridgewater said that?" "It's a problem. Mr. Bridgewater personally lodged a complaint, and just when Susan brought in your resignation, I ordered her to convince you to stay." "I see, so that's what this is about." I glared hard at Susan. She seemed a bit intimidated. Now was the time to truly fight. I have been suffering from workplace harassment by Susan. At this, President Thompson's expression changed. "What? What do you mean, Susan?" Susan stammered, I told Mr. Thompson about all the abuse I had endured from her. If Susan stays, I still intend to leave." Mr. Thompson then said gravely, "Understood. Workplace harassment is a serious issue in this day and age. We will thoroughly review our conduct." A few days after this meeting, an internal inquiry confirmed the harassment by Susan, and she was demoted and transferred. It was an unusually quick decision. The company wanted to restore trust with Bridgewater Commercial as soon as possible, so I was put back in charge of Bridgewater Commercial. Come the weekend, I went fishing as usual. George was next to me, and I told him about Susan's transfer. "Wow, you did it after all. You fought well, Noah." "No, it's all thanks to your advice, George. I'm truly grateful, and I'm happy to be back handling the Bridgewater Commercial account." "That's great, Noah. I'm glad to be working with you again." "Thank you. I look forward to continuing our work together, Mr. Bridgewater." Hey, drop the Mr. Bridgewater when we're off the clock." George waved his hand shyly. Actually, the president of Bridgewater Commercial was none other than George Bridgewater himself. Thinking back, my success in this major deal was thanks to my hobby of fishing. Being able to fish alongside George like this was also due to his invitation during a business meeting, asking, "How ought we go fishing together next time?" Of course, this recent issue was also resolved with George's help. He had said he'd pick up my pieces, but I never expected him to go this far. I can't thank him enough. I said this and bowed my head many times, but George looked at me and said, "The fight isn't over yet, right?" "That's right," I replied. I still had a big battle ahead of me. It was a custody battle for my daughter, Sarah. "If you win custody, bring your daughter here again," George said with a smile. I nodded firmly in response. Half a year passed. I fought. I confronted my wife, Helen, head-on. Finally, the verdict was out. I went to the fishing spot where George was to report the outcome, with my daughter in tow. In the end, George had helped me again. Being a business owner, he knew many good lawyers and referred one to me. Thanks to that, the court proceedings went in my favor, and now I am able to live with my daughter Sarah. Sarah, like me, has trouble speaking up. She couldn't express herself to her mother, but when the lawyer facilitated a conversation, she expressed her desire to stay with me, saying, "I want to be with Daddy." "The battle is finally over, Noah," George said, intently watching his fishing line. I whispered, "Yes," in response. I always felt pathetic, always being helped by George. To my slight dejection, George asked, "Sarah, do you like your dad?" Sarah, who became a 6th grader this year, seemed embarrassed to say "I like" out loud. Perhaps because of shyness, she hesitated with an E, but then nodded silently afterward. That's right. That's right. Your dad might not look dependable, but he's the kind of person who always looks out for others and supports them in the background." To think that he saw me in such a way, George's words made me so happy. I realized that what I had been doing wasn't wrong and decided to continue tackling everything with compassion. Then George's fishing line tugged violently. Oh, here it comes, a big one. After a long time, "Careful, George, take it slow." I said this and readied the net to support George, who was frantically